here, and we are going to discuss what I'm looking for post All Star break in the NBA season. So we'll see how we'll finish up. Now, the first thing I'm going to look to is not only can the Golden State Warriors break the Chicago Bulls 96 or 95 96 teams record of 72 wins, which I expect they will do. I'm curious to see if the Golden State Warriors can win 75 games this year. They're 48-4, which means to win 75 games, they would have to finish 27-3. Now that's a very tall task. That's winning 90%, but they're already winning 92% of their games thus far. Now, will they cool off at the end of the year? Will they start taking nights off? We'll see what happens post All Star break, but usually it's after the All Star break that teams usually start to heat it up. If they were going to struggle, it would have been beforehand. So I'll be very interested to see if they can do that, win 75 games. That'd be an amazing feat. To me, that would be the best season ever. That would be better than the Miami Dolphins going 17-0, or whatever year that Yankees team was. I guess 97, 98, where they won all those amount of games. Of course, they would have to cap it off with a championship. But you win 75 games and you win a championship, that means you win 91 games total. The most ever was 87 by that same Chicago Bulls team. Remember, though, you only played 15 games back then to win a championship. Now you have to win 16 games. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can do that. Of course, to break the Bulls record, they would have to go 25-5. That's almost certainly going to happen. So that's one thing I'm going to look for. Also, can the San Antonio Spurs get to 70 wins? They're 45-8. They would have to go 25-4 the rest of the way. Certainly plausible and possible, but we know that the Spurs tend to like the rest of their players, so I would doubt that. Number two, what I'll be looking for is which teams that have been disappointments this year will be able to make a playoff run. You have the Houston Rockets, who are currently out of the playoffs at 27-28. Now, I picked the Houston Rockets to win the championship, and I'm looking really bad with that one. We're going to see what they can do the rest of the way, though. Can they get it together? Will Dwight Howard be traded? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Also, the Sacramento Kings, another team that probably not disappointing in the sense that most teams had them around 9 or 10, or most experts had them around 9 or 10. But can they come up and make the playoffs? Certainly, they fizzled a bit of late. Looking in the Eastern Conference, you have teams like the Washington Wizards, who I put in the conference finals. Boy, I really know how to choose them. They're 23-28. Can they go on a run? You have a team like Chicago slipping down. How will the injuries affect them? But they are only 3 out of those Charlotte Hornets, who have been up and down. They've currently won 3 straight games heading into the All-Star break. So that'll be certainly one we'd want to look for the rest of the way. Another thing I'll be looking for is obviously the trade market. We talked about Dwight Howard. There's potential he will be traded. We saw that the Celtics were interested. I'm assuming there are other teams interested, but you don't know with Dwight Howard, especially given his past, some things that have happened. I don't think all of it's been Dwight Howard's fault, but unfortunately, sometimes you got to deal with it, and it happens that way, and you get stigmatized regardless of how well you have played or what exactly went on or did not go on. So we'll have to see how that happens for Dwight Howard. If Houston continues to drop out of the race, then they will almost certainly be the asking price will go down for Dwight Howard. So that's going to be interesting to see as well what happens when Houston comes out of the All-Star break. But got to keep an eye on that. Also, the Atlanta Hawks. There's talks about them trading Al Horford. Now, this is one of the things I don't necessarily like. The Hawks are 31-24. They are 4th in the Eastern Conference, which would guarantee them a home court advantage in the first round. And they're only 5.5 out of second place, which would guarantee you home court advantage in the first and second rounds. And they're talking about blowing the team up, trading Jeff Teague, trading Al Horford. It's one of the things I think the NBA needs to look at. I can understand teams that are bad trading high-quality players. I can't really ever accept, though, a team that's 4th in their conference in the playoff standings looking to trade some of their best assets because they just want to blow things up. So we'll see if Adam Silver, that was something that would have to be addressed in the offseason. Will they ever do away with the mid-season trades altogether? It's one of those things I just don't know what you're going to do about it exactly. So we'll see if Atlanta makes some of those trades. I would have to assume some of those guys get moved. It would just be too easy for that to happen. The last thing I'm looking for the rest of the season is what teams that we may not be looking at right now are going to come up and make runs. You look at the Eastern Conference, the Toronto Raptors, do they not get necessarily the publicity because they're up in Toronto? I think somewhat. I think people are taking notice of Toronto, and I think they're right around where most people would expect them to be. So I'm not really looking at them. The team in the Eastern Conference outside of the Boston Celtics, obviously we've seen this is what the Celtics have been doing most of the year. They're certainly a surprise team, but I look at the Miami Heat and where they're going to go from here. They're 29 and 24. They're in the negative in their differential, but let's see if Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, guys who have won before, can really start to guide this team. They'll have some time off during the All-Star break because of the extended break. I think they'll be fresh coming out and they'll see the finish line, and I expect them to especially make a run to get home court advantage in the first round because we just talked about Atlanta. They're possibly selling off some of their parts. They're only 2 back of the Celtics for the third spot, 6.5 back of the second spot. So let's see if they can make a run. As well as Charlotte Hornets, they got off to a hot start, scuffled a bit there. They're back above 500 with a 3-game winning streak though. So we'll see what they can do if they can move up the ranks and get out of that 8th spot. Because if you get up to, 6th or 5th, you have a chance to win your first round series. In the Western Conference, we've discussed the Memphis Grizzlies. They're certainly got to keep an eye on them, but of course, with the injury to Marc Gasol, we don't know exactly how that's going to go. I'm looking at the Utah Jazz. Now, the Jazz are 8th, they're 500. This is basically where they've been through most of the year, and most people would have expected them to be. Can they be a team that makes a run, especially with Dallas baiting? If they could get out of that 8th spot and the 7th spot as well, where they don't have to play Golden State or San Antonio, you might be able to potentially pull an upset in the first round. Now, they'd be looking at an Oklahoma City Thunder team if they get to the 6th spot. But that would be a very interesting series, as well as the Portland Trailblazers. You want to talk about a team that's overachieving. It's been the Trailblazers. They lost LaMarcus Aldridge. A lot of people expected them to be one of the worst teams in the conference. They've gotten to 500 at 27 and 27. Give Damian Lillard a lot of credit, and Coach Terry Stotts for keeping that team together. Can one of these two teams at the bottom get out of that spot and be a potential team to upset one of the top heavyweights in the Western Conference? Going to be very interesting to see. And going back to the Eastern Conference, what teams out of it can possibly get into it? Milwaukee Bucks, a team I had much higher. Again, one of my letdowns. 22 and 32, not a good record. They are 5.5 out of that last spot. Can this team turn it around? They've got to come out hot out of the All-Star break. I'd expect out of the first 15 out of the All-Star break, you've got to win at least 10. That would put you at about 32 and 37. Then we'll see. Again, this is a team that could also trade off some of their assets, so we don't know. But Milwaukee, I think, has more talent. The Washington Wizards as well. They've been another disappointment. Can they get there? And in the Western Conference, outside of the Houston Rockets and Sacramento Kings, I don't see much. You do have the New Orleans Pelicans. We've talked about them. They are 6.5 out. Going to be very hard for them to make it. But if there's any team, of course, outside of the Rockets and the Kings, it would be the New Orleans Pelicans because of the Anthony Davis factor, and he's certainly a guy who can make some noise there.